They say loyalty's a virtue until it turns into a leash. I knew mine had choked me the day I got a company-wide happy retirement Dana email while I was still in the Gotham building. No conversation, no handshake. Just a half-rotted fruit basket and a recycled card signed by people who still thought I worked in procurement. But let's rewind. 12 years. That's how long I bled for ProLogic's manufacturing. I started in a windowless backroom with a title that sounded made up and a chair that squeaked like it had PTSD. Supply Chain Coordinator, which basically meant I did everything from tracking shipments to babysitting forklift drivers who thought pallet alignment was an abstract concept. I didn't go to Ivy League. I didn't have a daddy on the board. What I had was grit, caffeine, and the ability to make things arrive on time, even when the universe said nah. You want numbers? Fine. In 2013, this company was a week away from bankruptcy. I remember the meeting like it's tattooed behind my eyes: gray suits, sweaty armpits, someone crying into a budget spreadsheet. Our supplier from Nevada, brand Core Alloys, was about to pull the plug unless we could guarantee $10 million in raw materials. No bank would touch us. Not even the local credit union that gave us free pens at the door. So I stood up, cleared my throat, and said, "What if I did?" The room went dead quiet. I'd like to pretend I sounded noble. I probably sounded insane, but I'd crunched the numbers. I knew what that pipeline meant, and I'd just paid off my house. A clause was written, Clause 14C. If I personally guaranteed the supply chain, the shipments would continue. If I ever left the company, the guarantee could be pulled at will. They signed the papers the next morning. The trucks rolled in. Made quota, and I went home and stared at my ceiling for 3 hours wondering if I'd just orphaned my own bank account. So yeah, 12 years. I ran that division like a war general. Logistics VP wasn't just a title, it was my damn identity. I knew every warehouse code by memory, every driver's birthday. I even hired a guy after he stole from us because he was the only one honest enough to admit it during the interview. Funny how the brain forgets faces when the money rolls in. We went from scraping to surplus, from duct tape to digital dashboards, and suddenly I was legacy, which is code for a polite way of calling you a fossil. Oh, and before I keep going, let me just say this. If you've been riding along through these stories without hitting that little subscribe button, yeah, 97% of y'all are ghosting us like we're your ex's voicemail. So click the damn thing. Keeps the lights on and the wine chilled. Anyway, I should have seen it coming. The tone started to shift. Meetings where I wasn't needed. Emails where I was CC'd instead of addressed. They replaced our holiday cards with QR codes for digital appreciation. One time, I was asked to reduce my email signature length to promote efficiency. That's when I knew I wasn't an executive anymore. I was a liability with a pension. Still, I held on, because I believed in the work, in the team, in the idea that maybe, just maybe, loyalty still mattered. But here's the catch. When you believe in something harder than the people who run it, that belief becomes a liability. And in my case, a very expensive one. First time I saw him, he was leaning against the break room fridge like it owed him money, shiny navy suit, gelled hair you could sand drywall with, and loafers so pristine you'd think they'd never met a sidewalk. He stuck out like a botoxed thumb, said his name was Chad, which already felt like a red flag, and introduced himself with a smile so wide I swear I saw his molars. "I'm shadowing you this quarter," he said like it was some kind of favor. I blinked. "Shadowing who? You," he grinned. "My uncle thought it'd be good for me to get familiar with logistics before I, scale operations." Ah, that uncle, our new CEO, married into the boardroom like a parasite with a PowerPoint. I should have known nepotism was brewing the minute they started talking about fresh energy and vision realignment. Chad was the package deal: MBA from somewhere expensive, no work history, and confidence you usually only see in lottery winners and drunk uncles at weddings. "Great," I said, because that's what you say when you're 3 years from retirement and 5 minutes from smashing a mug labeled #1VP against the copier. He followed me like a poorly coded chatbot. Asked questions that weren't really questions, more like smug little tests. Why do we still use rail for the Arizona line? Wouldn't just-in-time inventory reduce storage costs? Have you considered AI logistics platforms? The kind of crap you ask when you've never had to explain to a trucker why the warehouse is closed on Saturdays. I started calling him intern Skynet in my head. Then came the kicker. A meeting invite from HR titled Mentorship and Transition Strategy. Apparently, I was to help equip the next generation with institutional knowledge. Translation: I was supposed to hand over 12 years of systems, contacts, and fail-safes to a guy who once asked me what a bill of lading was. I played nice. Showed him the warehouse management dashboard. Walked him through the routing software. Let him fumble his way through scheduling a shipment and accidentally double-book a flatbed in Fresno. All while I smiled like a kindergarten teacher on muscle relaxers. But at night, I started pulling old folders. Physical ones. Because unlike Chad, I believe in hard copies. There it was, yellowed and creased from being shoved into a drawer behind a drawer. The brand core agreement. Supplier contract for the raw alloys that kept ProLogix alive. I flipped to Clause 14C and my stomach did this weird, quiet flip. My name, still there, Printed in ink, Dana L. Mercer, sole personal guarantor, no addendums, no revisions, no replacement signatory, not even a scratch out. I sat back, staring at the page like it had grown fangs. They never removed me, they never even thought to. I didn't move, didn't shout. Just laid the paper on my kitchen table like a relic from a religion I'd outgrown. A ticking clause ready to detonate, and they had no idea it existed. The next day at work, Chad asked me if we had a drone strategy. I smiled, handed him a site map, and marked the place I'd dig his professional grave if it came to that. I didn't act, not yet, but I made a copy of that contract. And I bought a fireproof safe. The projector screen glowed blue like a surgical light. Chad stood at the front of the conference room, sleeves rolled up like he'd done 5 minutes of manual labor that morning, and clicked his little remote with the smug precision of a man who thought Excel macros were black magic. The title slide said Streamlining Logistics, a new era, which already made me want to chew glass. Then came the kicker. Slide 2, a regional reroute plan with warehouse pivot points, depot consolidation, and a fuel optimization algorithm I'd built back in February. My slide, my format. Hell, he hadn't even changed the typo in the Fresno corridor header, freight optimization threshold, 2 H's. I remember the day I sent that draft up the chain. It got buried somewhere in a strategic vision deck and never saw daylight. Until now. And there he was, grinning like he'd cracked cold fusion, explaining his model in that confident, chin-jutting way of people who have never had to shovel 6 feet of crap from a loading dock at 4 a.m. while the shipment manifest prints out blank. Leadership was eating it up. Steve from finance nodded so hard I thought his neck might detach. Claire, who once asked me how many wheels a semi had, said, "This is exactly the kind of innovation we need." No one looked at me, not even once. I didn't say a word, didn't flinch. Just poured a stale cup of conference room coffee and sipped it like poison. My smile was thin, paper cut sharp. Practiced from years of swallowing my own brilliance and watching it get regifted by people with better jawlines. When it ended, Chad said, of course, "I'd love to thank the team for helping shape these ideas, which is corporate for you can all kiss my borrowed ass." The meeting broke. I went back to my office. Door closed, lights off. Then ping, calendar invite. Subject, retirement celebration planning. From HR, location, 3rd floor cafeteria. Message, Dana, we're so thrilled to be honoring your incredible contributions to the company. We look forward to celebrating your legacy as we transition to new leadership and strategic growth. Please RSVP. I stared at it, didn't blink. 15 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. An intern with a nervous smile held out a wicker basket wrapped in plastic. HR sent this, she mumbled. For appreciation. Inside, 3 green apples, a bruised banana, some crackers shaped like leaves, and 1 pear already oozing from the bottom. Like the party, it came a day too early and half a thought too late. I set it on the corner of my desk. Didn't touch it. Instead, I opened my drawer and pulled out a cardboard banker's box. No ceremony, no speeches. Just unplugged my keyboard, yanked out my planner, grabbed my battered coffee mug, the one that said ship happens, and 1 framed photo of my old team from 2014. The only year we hit quota without a single late truck. I didn't clear my digital folders, didn't wipe the hard drive, let them choke on the detritus of a decade. At exactly 5 p.m., I walked out. No wave, no tears, just the sound of my sensible heels on tile and the hum of the motion lights shutting off behind me. When I got home, I went straight to the closet, pulled down the fireproof safe. Combination, my daughter's birthday. Inside, the manila folder. The Brandcore contract still crisp and clean despite the world rotting around it like that pear. Clause 14C staring back at me like a patient blade. I laid it on the kitchen table, took out a pen, and began drafting a letter with the kind of calm that only comes after the final insult has been neatly filed under irreversible. The sound of my old inkjet printer spitting out legal paper at 11:42 p.m. was probably the most satisfying thing I'd heard in years. Not the white noise of the warehouse, not the hollow claps at my forced retirement party, not even the crack of my knees when I stand up too fast. This gentle, rhythmic birth of consequences was music. I'd spent the last 4 hours hunched at my kitchen table in a hoodie, reading through every line of that brand core contract like it was the Rosetta Stone of corporate idiocy. Clause after clause of legal sludge until there it was. Page 17, paragraph 4, subsection C. The undersigned hereby agrees to serve as sole personal guarantor of material shipment continuity for the duration of their active employment with ProLogix Manufacturing, Inc. Upon cessation of employment, the undersigned may at will withdraw said guarantee by written notice to Brand Core Alloys, at which point all contractual obligations related to the guarantee shall be deemed null. It was like reading a time capsule written by my younger, sharper, and significantly more cynical self. I remembered the day I added that clause. The company's lawyers didn't even blink, probably too relieved someone was willing to sign anything during that financial nosedive. And now it was a ghost clause. An unexploded shell buried in a contract no one had reviewed since Obama was in office. I didn't trust my tired eyes, so I called Lauren. She picked up on the second ring. Still the same no-nonsense cadence she had back in our days at Brattle and Finch. Tell me you're not calling about Chad. Worse, I said. I think I found the detonator. I faxed over the clause. Yes, faxed. Because Lauren insists on hardline communication in case the feds are listening, and honestly, after a bottle of Cabernet, it didn't sound that paranoid. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Jesus Christ, Dana, she said. They didn't just forget this. They never read it. I told her I was thinking of invoking it. She paused for a long moment. If you do, she said, it's going to hit them harder than an SEC audit during bonus season. Good. I opened a blank Word doc. One page, no fluff, just the necessary legalese, direct and clean. To whom it may concern at Brand Core Alloys. This letter serves as formal notice of the immediate withdrawal of personal guarantee as defined in Clause 14C of the Supply Continuity Agreement, dated March 12, 2013, between ProLogix Manufacturing, Inc. and Brand Core Alloys. The undersigned's employment with ProLogix Manufacturing, Inc. ceased on insert date, thereby meeting the conditions of Clause 14C. Effective upon receipt of this notice, all personal obligations related to the aforementioned agreement are hereby rescinded. Regards, Dana L. Mercer. I printed 2 copies, signed one, dated it. Then I slid it into a folder marked pending, tucked it into the safe under my old W-2s and sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling like it owed me closure. I didn't send it, not yet. See, there's a strange kind of power in the pause before impact. Like the moment you flip the breaker but haven't hit the switch. The silence just before the engine catches fire. Chad thought he was holding the steering wheel. He didn't realize I still owned the brakes. The smell hit me before the music, cheese cubes, bad cologne, and those supermarket roses that look like they've been gaslighting each other in a walk-in cooler. Third floor cafeteria, 2:00 p.m. Folding table covered in Costco pastries and a sad balloon arch that read Happy Trails, like I was being sent off to pasture. I walked in wearing a gray blazer, dark sunglasses, and the kind of stillness that makes people wonder if you're medicated or just done pretending. I wasn't there for the fruit punch. I was there to witness the farce with my own eyes. A few folks clapped when they saw me. Others looked like they'd seen a ghost because, let's be honest, once you're not on payroll, you're just a specter in a pantsuit. I nodded, said nothing. Took a plastic cup of club soda and posted up in the corner like I was supervising my own funeral. Then Chad took the mic. He cleared his throat, flashed his veneers, and started his little obituary. Dana's time here has been monumental. She's a legacy, really. Someone who's been with us through thick and thin, a true team player. Lucky to have learned from her example as we move into a bold new era. I tuned out after that. My brain replaced his voice with the hum of fluorescent lights and the soft thunk of my jaw grinding itself down. Legacy. As in old software. As in replaceable. As in throw it in a museum and call it heritage while you gut everything it built. 15 minutes in, I slipped out without a word. The applause was still fading as the stairwell door clicked shut behind me. At home, I made a grilled cheese, took off the blazer, and watched the sun drip down behind the neighbor's shed like it owed me something. I'd almost managed to forget the party when my phone buzzed. A name I hadn't seen in years. Ronnie, WH Manager 0917. Subject line, heads up. They're rushing production. Just got word from a buddy at the plant. $10M shipment getting fast-tracked for Tuesday. Looks like they're trying to lock in deliveries before Q4. Hope you're enjoying retirement, lol. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the safe. Pulled the letter, sat at the table, read it one more time, then I called Lauren, send it. You sure? Yes, I said. Let's see how they handle logistics without the glue. She didn't say another word, just hung up to do what she does best, turn paper into panic. And I poured a glass of red, walked onto my back porch, and watched the wind tear through my neighbor's cheap plastic gazebo like fate chewing through ego. They wanted a clean exit. They just didn't check the fine print on the fire door. 3 days later, somewhere on a sun-baked stretch of I-70 just outside Richfield, Utah, a 16-wheeler with $10 million worth of rare alloy slammed to a stop like it hit the invisible wall of corporate karma. Driver said the order was flagged during a routine shipping check. Dispatch told him to pull over and await instructions. He waited and waited. Then the message came through, hold delivery, guarantee withdrawn, do not proceed. That was it. No more context, no explanation. Just 6 words that made the trucker crack open a thermos and cue up some classic rock while the entire Western supply line quietly hemorrhaged into chaos. By noon, the Brand Core client portal was locked. Red letters across the login page read, shipment suspended, client contract breach guarantee terminated. ProLogix's production plant in Reno froze before lunch. By 2:00 p.m., their Illinois facility followed suit. Every automated workflow that relied on those alloy inputs hit a hard stop. The warehouse screens glitched from green to red like Christmas came early and brought doom as a +1. Phone lines lit up. Order cancellations. Delivery complaints. Screaming VPs from downstream partners who suddenly had $100,000's worth of nothing rolling off their conveyor belts. A defense contract went dead in the water before dinner. The coup, Greg something, one of those corporate lifers with a handshake like old tofu, started emailing me around 3:23 p.m. The first one was cordial. Hi Dana, hope retirement's treating you well. We're experiencing a bit of an issue with brand core. Just wondering if you've heard anything on your end? Then, hey Dana, really need to talk ASAP. Please call me back, it's urgent. Then, Dana, we have a serious situation unfolding here. Please respond. This is critical. He tried my personal cell. I watched the screen light up from my deck chair. Let it ring. Again, again. My phone buzzed like a dying wasp and then gave up. Lauren handled it like a surgeon. Cold, clean. Her email back was one line. Per clause 14C, Miss Mercer's guarantee is no longer active. Please direct future correspondence elsewhere. No salutation, no fluff. Just a legal guillotine dropped mid-sentence. An hour later, my LinkedIn started getting creepy. COO viewed my profile, then the HR director, then Chad. Oh, sweet clueless Chad. Probably wondering if he should add crisis mitigation to his resume, or maybe experienced in post-guarantee recovery operations, which in his case means panic Googling how to secure high-risk logistics contracts when you've just fired the one person who kept your company solvent. By sundown, the whispers had turned into screaming. Internal comms leaked, a Slack thread full of finger-pointing and vague threats. Someone tagged the CEO in all caps. Who signed this guarantee agreement and why wasn't IT updated? Meanwhile, I watched my tomatoes grow. Real slow, real quiet. Funny how loud a company gets when the woman they forgot still holds the master key and decides it's time to turn it. The courier showed up just after lunch, sweating through his polo, clutching a manila envelope like it was made of nitroglycerin. Said he had to get my signature, even though the return address just read Executive Suite Confidential. I signed, not because I owed them anything, because I was curious what desperation smelled like on heavy bond paper. Inside, a cover letter that said we value your expertise, which was corporate for we've torched everything and need your fire hose. Attached was a reinstatement offer so bloated with buzzwords I half expected it to come with its own TED talk and apology fruit basket. They were offering me my job back, same title, slightly bigger office, and a signing bonus that looked impressive until you realized it was hush money with a comma. I flipped to the second page. Buried in the fine print, non-disclosure clauses, liability waivers, and a line that read all past agreements to be considered null upon execution of new terms. Ah, there it was. They weren't just trying to rehire me, they were trying to erase the clause. Sweep clause 14C into a legal oubliette and pretend the last week was just a disruption in continuity. I slid the packet across my kitchen counter, right into a stack of unopened credit card offers and fake Medicare scams. It didn't even deserve its own drawer. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Lauren had forwarded me an email. Subject line, leaked brand core internal. It was from a contact inside the supplier company. When I used to drink whiskey with at logistics conferences before ProLogix decided those expenses weren't strategically aligned. FYI, they're panicking. This just came across internal threads. Quoting here, ProLogix failed to formally assume the personal guarantee upon leadership transition. All contractual liability still tied to Mercer. Their legal team never requested an amendment. This was entirely dependent on her continued employment. There it was. Black and white, they never backed the guarantee on their end. They'd been driving a truck across a canyon for years, assuming the bridge was still under them. Turns out I was the bridge, and I'd just pulled out the last nail. That night, ProLogix held what they called an emergency stakeholder briefing. A leaked Zoom invite showed up in one of my burner inboxes. I didn't log in, but the screenshots made the rounds fast. CEO looked like he hadn't slept in days. Eyes sunken, tie askew, flanked by two men in suits who were probably lawyers or PR handlers, maybe both. Chad sat in a square box in the corner of the screen, trying to look important while clutching a Red Bull like it was sacramental wine. The press statement was full of phrases like unexpected liability exposure, supplier miscommunication, and temporary fulfillment delays. Then came Chad's moment. A shareholder asked if he could explain the contract lapse. His reply, I think there may have been like a system glitch with the document chain or maybe some version control issues. Version control. That boy really said version control. A logistics contract backed by a personal guarantee with federal implications, and this golden retriever in a tie blamed it on Dropbox. The chairman didn't even try to hide his sigh. Meanwhile, I microwaved leftover lasagna and queued up an old Columbo rerun. Because watching a smug little empire unravel under the weight of its own arrogance pairs beautifully with pasta and petty justice. I didn't respond to the courier, didn't return the calls, didn't acknowledge the offer. I just let silence do what it does best, make the guilty echo inside their own mess. The suits started to turn on each other like rats on a drowning yacht. By Tuesday morning, shareholder emails were leaking faster than their quarterly projections. One particularly sharp message, CC'd to half the board, opened with the line, if someone can explain why our entire supply chain was balanced on an unrenewed personal guarantee, I'd love to hear it before the stock drops again. They held another internal call. This one, I didn't need screenshots for. I got the play-by-play from an old assistant who still owed me one from the printer fire of 2017. Apparently, it started calm, ended chaos. One board member, Leela Chang, VP of Capital Investment, and someone who once watched me carry pallets during a blizzard, spoke up near the end. Her voice reportedly cut through the fluff like a bandsaw through butter. I worked with Dana Mercer when she built your logistics architecture out of duct tape and insomnia. If you're telling me the only reason shipments ever moved was because of a clause she buried in a contract to save your asses 10 years ago, I want a full internal audit. Now, silence, followed by a stammered, "We'll take that under advisement." Later that day, Chad's name quietly disappeared from the internal directory. The email alias Chad Hearing Initiative at Prologix.com bounced. Interns whispered he'd been put on leave. Translation, he was escorted out with a box of monogrammed pens and a face full of stunned privilege. I'd feel bad, but I remember the way he smirked when he explained my own ideas back to me like I was a slow child. Around 4:30 that afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then it rang again. This time, I checked the transcript. "Dana, this is Arthur Mendez, chairman of the board. I was hoping we could speak privately, just to clear the air, and possibly discuss reconciliation options moving forward." I almost laughed, clearing the air, like this was about a misunderstanding over who drank the last Diet Coke in the executive fridge. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened LinkedIn. Updated my headline to Strategic Guarantor, never just an employee. No rant, no subtweets, no cryptic memes. Just a quiet reminder that they didn't fire a middle manager. They severed the only rope holding up their circus tent. Within an hour, the post had over 900 reactions. My inbox lit up like a fireworks stand in July. Recruiters, journalists, former coworkers sending me the little clapping emoji with "knew it." Legend, "You still got it, boss." The silence from ProLogix, meanwhile, was thunderous. They'd underestimated me. Worse, they'd forgotten me. Now they were learning what happens when a company forgets the woman who built the floor they're standing on. The waves didn't crash so much as exhale, brushing the shore like they were tired of trying to be dramatic. My coffee was still warm, the mug chipped just enough to feel honest. I sat on the porch of a beach house I didn't post about, rented under a different name, where the cell service was spotty and the peace was uninterrupted. On the little TV inside, muted but glowing, the news chyron crawled like it was afraid to say the whole truth out loud. ProLogix shares plummet mid-contract crisis. Nepotism allegations emerged. There was B-roll of the headquarters I used to walk into every morning. Now a sad backdrop for experts speculating how a single contract mishap could unravel a decade of expansion. The camera cut to the CEO stepping out of a black SUV, face drawn, tie limp, hands shoved in his pockets like maybe if he stuffed them deep enough, the blame wouldn't stick. The voiceover called it a voluntary resignation, which, in boardroom speak, means we tossed him off the boat before he could finish sinking it. No mention of Chad. Guess his leave went permanent. What they did mention, briefly, and with the caution of a man defusing a bomb, was that the supplier agreement had been urgently renegotiated, now at cost described only as significantly above previous terms. I knew what that meant, double, maybe more. Brandcorp had no reason to be generous anymore. The goodwill price left the building the moment I did. Lauren forwarded me the final thread. A frantic string of emails between ProLogix and Brandcorp, with legal CC'd, trying to backpedal, reframe, offer settlements, explore synergies. The last one came from Brandcorp's side. "Cold as marble, your company failed to uphold the continuity clause after Miss Mercer's departure. As such, previous terms are void. Please see the updated contract proposal. Note, this offer is non-negotiable." Attached was a short note from Lauren. They'd forgotten you saved them. You simply reminded them how much it cost. I sat with that for a moment, not angry, not triumphant, just done. I didn't torch the building, didn't shout on Twitter, didn't write an op-ed or leak anything to the press. I didn't even try to ruin them. I just took my name off the glue, and the whole machine fell apart like a cheap desk in humidity. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.